Hey guys, it's Kevin again, finally here to review Marriage Story. And what Marriage Story is essentially about is we focus on this couple. We have Charlie, who is this very highly esteemed and well-respected playwright, and also Nicole, who has starred in many of his plays, but also is a very talented actress in her own regard. And these two have been happily married for a better part of a decade, but now they've gotten to a point where they're really starting to go in their own directions, and because of that, they're going through the very difficult process of divorce. And while these two try to go through this as amicably as possible, when lawyers get involved and things like that, things start to get a lot messier, and it causes these two to realize just how strenuous and nerve-wracking of a process this is really going to be, and we see them just try to hold together as much as they really can, but also see them start to brace for the inevitable change that's about to take place, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Marriage Story overall, I was obviously hyped for this film. I mean, with all the praises and gang and things like that. And look, with a film like Marriage Story that's been so well regarded and everyone's had on like their, top of the year and things like that, there's just been so much just acclaim for this film. It's very easy to let a film like this disappoint you because you're going into it with very high expectations in that way, and that hype could end up killing the entire film for you. But similar to other films I've seen this year, that is the exact opposite for Marriage Story. This film exceeded my already very high expectations. This is easily one of the most brutal, one of the most realistic, but also one of the best films of the entire year. It absolutely lives up to the hype in every way possible, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And again, that's another thing that has been praised a lot, but I mean, it is definitely very well deserved. In fact, I don't think this movie would work nearly as well if it wasn't for the cast here. Everyone really does a phenomenal job. And that's especially true when it comes to its two key performances here. Let's first talk about Adam Driver. He's one of the best actors working today. He has shown numerous times how he can just deliver some really challenging material and really just goes for it whenever he is given a challenging role like this. But his role as Charlie in this movie might just be his best yet, because this is a guy that, yes, he can be very douchey. He has made some really bad choices, but at the same time, he has a lot of love for his wife, and he really wants to do what he can to try to support his son. He wants to be a good father, and you really start to see how this starts to eat away at him, how this really starts to get him to make some very difficult decisions in life, and I just thought that he was just phenomenal here. I think he gives one of the best performances, maybe the best performance of the entire year, to be honest with you. This might just be the best performance of the entire year that I have seen. It really is just that good, and if he is not at the very least nominated for an Oscar, that's going to be a problem. But if he doesn't win, I think it's even more disgraceful, just considering how challenging this material was. It could have gone flat in a second. I mean, if any other director, if any other actor were to have handled this, I don't think it would have worked as well. But Driver just makes it work so well. It makes it feel so authentic. It makes it feel like such a real, raw performance. He really just sunk his teeth into this role and just completely transforms into this character, and I just absolutely adored everything that he was doing here. He pretty much blew me away here. But same goes for Scarlett Johansson, who also gives, I think, one of the best performances of the entire year as Nicole. And look, I've loved her in other things before, but I don't think she's ever been this good before. This is such a phenomenal performance from her. Nicole is someone who is also going through a very rough path in her life. She has very much wants her own things, but she also feels very lost in that way. And we really see how this starts to affect Nicole and how she starts to go through this very rough sort of transition. And just seeing the relationship that these two have is so well done, because even though, yes, these two are getting a divorce, we still see the chemistry that they once did have, why these two did once work well together, why the two did have a connection once, and that's very hard to do considering the thematic material in this movie, but these two just absolutely nail it in this film, and I think give two of the best performances of the entire year, and I really don't think this film would have worked as well as it would have if their chemistry was not as just fantastic as it was. It's so good, in fact, that you would think that these two would have dated in real life, that these two would have had some kind of a relationship, because it just really feels so real in that way, and I think they did such a fantastic job with that here. Easily just two incredibly powerhouse performances, and that is some of the most impressive that I've seen all year. But the rest of the cast here also does do some fantastic work. Laura Dern is always great, and she does a really good job as the lawyer that is representing Scarlett Johansson. I don't think that it is a Oscar-worthy role. It is a really good role for sure, but I don't think it's as Oscar-worthy as everyone's been saying. But it's one of those roles that Laura Dern just completely nails, and I think she does a fantastic job with for sure. She has this one monologue, especially, that I thought was very powerful, and I really liked where, what they did with her overall. I thought she was definitely really great here. Ray Liotta is also really great. Alan Alda, even though he's not in the movie that much, he definitely leaves a huge impression on you. He is one of the only characters in this movie that really shows these two, that doesn't try to make things worse for these two. The other lawyers here, they're very passionate and they have their own sort of ideals, and that's kind of getting in the way of the case. Whereas Alan Alda, he really does want to go through this in the most respectful way possible, and I really did like him in the film for the most part. Thought he did a really great job. Merritt Wever is always great, and she's definitely really great here. Julia Hagerty. Even the kid in this movie, Azhy Robertson, even though he doesn't have a lot of challenging material, it just felt really real to me. This didn't even feel like a performance. It just felt like he was just a kid that was going through this situation, and that's something I can say about most of the performance here. They just feel very genuine. Nobody feels like they're playing a character. Nobody feels like they're acting, and that's when you know you have a great ensemble on display. I know this film has been nominated for best ensemble, like the SAGs and things like that, and it's definitely very much deserved, because this is easily one of the most talented of the entire year, and like I said, I just don't think this film would work overall if it wasn't for the cast here. But now we got to get to the directing and the writing, which, similar to the cast, is going to be another one of the biggest draws, because Noah Baumbach is one of those directors that I think handles these kinds of stories very well. He's really great about telling stories about life and family struggles and things like that, and that is no different here. However, this feels like a different beast entirely, because not only is he doing his usual thing where he's telling a, story about a struggling family, but it's far more personal for him, because he himself went through these kind of struggles. He knows what the divorce process is like, and you can tell that he poured his heart and soul into this film, and he just does a fantastic job with it. What I love about his directing is, again, similar to what I said with the acting, is that it doesn't feel like a movie. This feels like a real situation. This feels like Baumbach, he didn't need to do any research, because he knew exactly what he was doing here. When the film needs to be really funny, it is actually a lot of fun. But it's not because what's actually going on is, trying to be funny. It's just because the situation itself is funny in that way. But when the film needs to get really dark and really serious and just really hard-hitting in that way, again, none of it feels like it is compromising the other. None of it feels like it is forceful in that way. Everything just feels so real. It feels almost like, again, you're watching a real couple. You're watching a real situation take place, and I just think Baumbach did such an incredible job directing this movie. It's one that could be very hard to pull off, because you're running the risk of making it, if you handle it in a certain way, it can get really cheesy. But the way he goes about it, it just feels very authentic. It feels like a much more realistic look at what's going on here, and it never really feels like you're watching something that is fictional, and that's when you know you have some great directing on display here. When you can direct a movie and not make it feel like one, and that alone just shows how great of a director you really are there. But like I said, between the passion and just the overall just effort he poured into this film, I mean, you can tell he was doing everything he can to make this feel like his big magnum opus. Like, if there's one film that Noah Baumbach could be remembered for, it would be this film, and it very much does feel the way, and I think he just did an excellent job with that. The screenplay, though, is easily one of my favorites of the entire year. There is not a single scene in this movie that again, feels ingenuine. There's not a single scene in this movie that feels false. Everything feels so real, but it's mainly because of the way the story is done. You would think with a film about a couple getting a divorce, it would be a very grueling watch, and it is, but not in the way that you are expecting it to. It's mainly because although Charlie and Nicole do eventually have a moment where, they really do get to sink their teeth into everything and really just pour out how they feel about each other and, scream at each other, that's really only one scene in this movie. It's the scene that everyone is talking about. And that scene is very much, well deserving of all the praise it's gotten. It's one of the best of the entire year. But the reason that scene is so effective is because the rest of this movie, you have two people here who are genuinely good people. They're not trying to, fuck over the other. That's not their mission here. Their mission is to go through this in a way that doesn't hurt the other, to go through this, just to get through this. They don't want to have to do this to each other, but they know that they both want different things. And that's what I love about Baumbach's screenplay. He keeps it very neutral. He doesn't try to make you be on Charlie's side. He doesn't try to make you be on Nicole's side. These two don't want to take sides. They don't want to have to go through this whole thing, but they're just in a place in their relationship where they just can't be in one anymore. They can't be together in this way because they're both going in very different directions. Charlie is someone who is very focused on his work. He is very widely touted. He's very respected in the way. He he is just overwhelmed by how much success he's gotten at such a young age, and he's doing a really great job with that. But because of that, he doesn't really respect some of Nicole's needs, where Nicole, she wants to be a little bit more independent. She doesn't want to always be in Charlie's stuff. She wants to venture out more, and you can see that Charlie hasn't really shown her that support. And again, the film does a really great job with showing why these two worked, but why there were always cracks in the foundation. It's not like this is new. This has always been there. It's just gotten worse over time. And I just felt that they did a really great job of really zeroing in on this relationship. The film starts off with us, seeing what these two like about each other, but you also get to see why this is a problem, why even though they like these things about each other, some of those things do compromise their marriage in a way. Charlie, like I said, he is someone who really does love the fact that he's successful. He's very busy. He's gotten a lot of success from his work and things like that. But because of that, he just hasn't really put forth the effort into giving Nicole that support that she needs, in letting her venture out. And you can see how that really has put them at, that definitely has put them in a difficult position for sure. But again, what the film does really well is that no one in this film, even the lawyers, feel like bad people. Even the lawyers, they just feel like people that are doing their damnedest to do their job. They're doing whatever they can to make sure this case goes in their favor. Yes, Nora Fenshaw does some things that are a little bit unethical, and yes, Ray Liotta especially does some things that may be looked at as unethical, but when you're in a situation like this, you're kind of forced to make these sort of decisions. You're kind of forced to do these things that are going to hurt the other. And I thought the film went about it in a very different way than you were expecting, but that's what makes this film stick out among the rest. It's not a film that feels Hollywoodized at all. It just feels like if two people were in this situation, this is how it would play out. This is how it would work. And once, again, these two have to make these decisions, that's why that argument scene sticks out that much more. That's why that scene is so effective. And oh my God, once we get there, it just becomes so increasingly hard to watch because, again, it just feels so real. It really feels like these two people just pouring out these, letting out all of this anger and all of this resentment they've had towards the other for years. All of these things that they've kept hidden because they wanted to keep their relationship intact. They wanted things to work out. But because of the fact that they're now in a place where they're hurting the other, they might as well just let it all out. And they're never the same after that. But again, it just feels so real. But again, I want to reiterate, throughout the rest of the movie, these two are pretty neutral to each other. These two are actually pretty genuine to each other. They're not trying to hurt the other. They're pretty cordial in that way. and not just because of the relation, but also how much they care about, raising their son. Charlie, especially, he's very concerned with the fact that Nicole is living on the other side of the world. He's in New York. He needs to stay in New York. He has responsibilities there. But he also wants to have time for his son. But he also doesn't want to have sole custody. He wants Nicole to be able to have that custody as well. And so there's just a lot that these two are dealing with circumstance-wise, and it really just shows how hard of a process this really is. Anyone that's ever been through a divorce, I think you're really gonna feel for after this movie. Thankfully, I've been fortunate enough where I've never had to see anyone go through something like that. I have very, loving parents and things like that, so I've never had to see, I've never seen something like that personally, but I know of people who are from divorced families, and I know people who have gone through difficult situations, and it just makes you feel for them that much more. It makes you realize, just how much of a struggle that really is, and I think the film does an excellent job with that for sure. And again, seeing these two having to, leave that relationship is very saddening. Little things like Charlie having to go to his own barber because Nicole used to cut his own hair. She cut him and his son's hair in the house. This was something that she did a lot. And the fact that, she's not going to be able to do that anymore, it's very sad. It's something that it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it very much is in that way. And him kind of coming to that realization, it really does hit you, and it overall just makes for one of the most emotional and I think well-written screenplays of the entire year. There aren't many films that you're going to see this year that I think feel as real and as authentic as this one, and will give you as much of a reaction as this one did, because there are definitely many moments, but it never feels like the movie is emotionally manipulative. You're just sad because these characters are sad, because of what these characters have to go through, and the fact that these are good people, but they've made a lot of really bad decisions. Charlie especially, he's done a lot of things that has caused the downfall of their relationship, and these are things that he is very sorrowful towards, but he also feels like he, did them for a reason. He has a reason for doing it. And you can understand both of their perspectives in that way. And again, just keeping things neutral, it just makes for an overall even more engrossing and effective story. And I think they did an excellent job with that here. The cinematography in this film, though, is absolutely astounding. There are so many shots that very much do stick out. So many shots that, definitely leave an impact on you. And I think the film is just incredibly well shot for sure. There are just some, especially the, and you've seen in the trailer the shot of like both of them on different sides, and you get that nice split screen and things like that. Just things like that. The film always does an excellent job with, and I just really love the cinematography here. The score here by Randy Newman, it's obviously fantastic, but what he did so well, what I think the score here is that he took a very similar melody that he would apply to the Toy Story films, but he gives it a bit more of an edge. He gives it an authenticity that just really works well for this film and complements it nicely. And again, we already know that Randy Newman is great, but just seeing his score in context of this film, it just makes it that much more emotional. There are many scenes where I think the score just really stuck out in that way, particularly towards the end. I thought he did a really excellent job with, again, not manipulating your emotions, but just making it work for the story. And it's easily one of my favorite scores of the entire year. I love what he ended up doing here. And the editing in this film is also pretty much flawless. I mean, isn't a single scene I feel like that was wasted. There isn't a single scene here that I feel like should have been cut out in that way. I just think that the film was incredibly well edited, and there were many scenes that, especially, they go on for a while, and that wouldn't happen in many movies, but there are many scenes that go on a lot longer than you would expect them to. That argument scene's a really good example. There's a courtroom scene that goes on for a while. I mean, there's a lot of scenes that are like that here, but again, it's all purposeful. It's all there just to show, make this feel as real as possible, make this feel as genuine as possible, and I think overall that was very well accomplished. Guys, Marriage Story is easily one of the best films of the entire year. It very much does live up to the hype. It's definitely not the easiest film to get through, but it's one that I think is very much worth your time. It's just as emotional, it's just as resonative as pretty much everyone has said. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson deserve all the praise and all the awards in the world. They give the two best performances that I've seen all year, especially Adam Driver. I mean, again, he needs to win. This is not a matter of being nominated. He needs to win. He's absolutely the front runner, and he absolutely deserves that for sure. So I really hope that he does get in there. Noah Baumbach gives the best directing he's ever given. I don't think he's ever going to top this for sure. Just the amount of effort he poured into here. It's a phenomenal screenplay that keeps things very neutral. The film can be a lot of fun for sure. There's a lot of really funny moments here. But again, this is a film that is just trying to be very genuine. It really is a look at these two people that are good, but have to do things that are, you know, hurting the other, that they don't really want to have to do. And just in general, I think is a really good exploration of divorce, but not just divorce, also the trauma that can go into that, the aftermath of it, but also seeing this waning relationship, seeing these two people that were once in love, and seeing them gradually fall out of it. It's very tragic to behold, and it just makes for one of the best films of the entire year. It lives up to the hype in every way possible, and I am absolutely going to give Marriage Story overall an A+. Like I said, guys, I apologize for this review being so late, but it does not change the fact that this film is so masterful in that way. And once again, Netflix, I mean, I don't know how we are at a point where Netflix has not only made one, but two of the best films of the entire year, and yet they're still they're still distributing things like Six Underground. Seriously, I really hope Netflix looks at how much stuff and how much acclaim that they've been getting this year, how many awards they're about to receive for these films, and really take a hard look and think, what do we really want to be making here? What's our real goal? Do we want to make, you know, really widely touted films like Marriage Story and Irishman, or do we just want to make fucking the next Michael Bay movie? Like, what are we really trying to do here? What's our vision? I really hope that if there's anything that Netflix takes from this film, it's that they realize that this is the direction they need to be going in. And I think there's a slight chance that might be finally happening, but we still have things like that Dwayne Johnson movie coming out from the director of Skyscraper or whatever. So I don't know if we're there yet, but either way, I hope Netflix really does at least try to make an effort to maybe change things up a bit. But either way, guys, in my review of Marriage Story, let me know what you guys saw of this movie overall, left your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.